Yeah, so let's talk about quitting because this is what this is about. And I want to be fair to him and talk about people can easily say, "Oh, he quit 3 times in 3 years or whatever it is on 3 different franchises and he got traded." But let's talk about Houston. Let's talk about the situation that he quit on and when he forced the trade to Brooklyn. There was a rebuild about to happen. Daryl Morey tried a couple things. He traded for Chris Paul. They hit their ceiling. He traded for Russell Westbrook, which was an awful trade in hindsight. And they were about to start a rebuild. And James Harden basically said, "I'm not going to be part of this rebuild. Get me out of here." Is it fair to criticize him for quote unquote quitting on the Houston Rockets after being there for 10 years or so?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, you didn't get your ring, you didn't win, but the way he forced himself out of Houston was really strange, right? I mean, dude shows up in like a fat suit for a couple practices. Like, I mean, that's by all
That's
accounts,
the
it's a fat
rumor,
suit,
right?
man.
Is he was
That's the
wearing a
rumor,
fat
right?
suit. Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. You look at him like 2 weeks in Houston and 2 weeks later in Brooklyn, he's lost all that weight. There's no other explanation. Um, it's just, yeah. I mean, he absolutely quit on that team. He could have gone about it a more professional way. I think that's why people are like, you quit on Houston, right? Because he was so unprofessional about it. He was just like demanding a trade. He's like, rebuild, screw this, right? I don't want to be here. But if that's that was your team for 10 years, and you're like, hey, you know what, Daryl, I'll give you a chance to shop me around. If you don't get something you like, I'll stick around another year. Don't like, but please try to trade me because it's a rebuild. I'm still in the prime of my career. Like, much different approach than, hey, f you, Daryl Morey. I'm here and I've gained like 100 pounds over the summer. I can't play anymore. You're like, completely different approach, right? The way he did it was just
Sure, sure.
absurd and ridiculous. And so I think it's fair to criticize him for saying he quit on Houston. I mean, that was like what Randy Moss did to the Raiders, man. Like, he just showed up and was like, you know what? Screw the
I'm
Raiders.
out of here. Yeah.
I'm not even gonna play. So that's kind of what Harden did. I get it. Randy Moss had no affiliation with the Raiders, but uh, Harden had a long legacy there in Houston, so
Mhm.
he kind of just threw that all away for getting traded
Yeah,
to Brooklyn. So
that's fair. I think it was a rebuild, so I you can't completely fault him for wanting to leave. Like you said, he did force his way out in an unprofessional way. I don't think it was a fat suit. I think he did like he would he's doing like a carb bulk or something.
something he
There's
did something he did something weird to
yeah.
make it look like he got big, man. It
Yeah,
was
and
weird.
then he probably cut weight like a boxer or a
Yeah,
UFC
that's probably what
fighter,
he
like
does.
before his Brooklyn debut. But I mean, those images. There was one in particular in like the powder blue
Yeah.
Rockets like warm ups, and
Yes.
he legit looked. I mean, he's listed at 220, and he looked like he had a pot belly. He looked about
Yeah,
$250.
he looked like he was like 260 easily.
Yeah, and then 4 days later, he's I know Black slims you, but he's wearing the Nets uniform, and
He looks like he's down to
you
like
know
215 at that point.
yeah.
It's like he
So
lost even more weight. So
maybe it seems like it wasn't so much that he left Houston, but the manner in which he left Houston. But I think
100%.
that starts the questions that we start to ask about him and his work ethic, which I think those questions were already being asked, but he doesn't do much in that time. But so then he goes to Brooklyn, and they have this season where it looks like they're they're probably the favorite in the East when it's him, Kyrie, and KD. They look incredible. And of course, because they're cursed or something, the Nets as a franchise, I don't know what it is, but everything goes wrong. Kyrie turns his ankle, and was it game one, game two against the Bucks, and that wasn't the conference finals, it was the conference semis. Or was it the conference final? I think it was the conference semis.
I think it
And
was the
then,
semis. I think you're right. The
yeah.
semis.
And then uh, Harden hurts his hamstring, and he's basically a decoy. And they still come within that toes length of beating the Bucks in that game. But this is an important caveat to the Brooklyn story: is COVID. COVID happens, and this
Yes,
is
that's
another
right.
big what if in the James Harden saga. because after that season, they come back. They're coming back. It's the 2020-21 season, or sorry, the 21-22 season, and it looks like everything's going to be great, but there's a vaccine mandate in New York City, and Kyrie Irving is not playing, and then he's only playing away games and not home games, and it just becomes this whole thing. And all of a sudden, James Harden finds himself in a situation where Kyrie is getting this preferential treatment where he doesn't have to play every game. He plays once a week or once every 2 weeks, whatever it is. So, with that nuance, do you blame him for wanting to leave Brooklyn and forcing his way to Philadelphia?
Yeah, again, it's the way he went about all of this, man.
Sure.
It's not wanting to get out. Like, okay, he's like, oh damn, Kyrie's a nutcase. I better get out of here. I know this Nets team's gonna implode at some point. Maybe that's what he thought. But again, it's the way he went about it. It was just so strange. It was just like he just like one day was like, you know what, FKD, F Kyrie, get me out of here. And to your point, it seems like maybe he was jealous of the treatment those guys were getting, where he's like, oh crap, I got to be the guy again. I got to be the guy next to KD. I got to do all the work. Maybe he didn't want to do that anymore, and that speaks to his work ethic, right? Like maybe he's just lazy. Maybe at some point he's just like, man, I'm tired. Someone carry me for once. Um, so I think it's again the way he went about it was just weird, right? Like he was just like one day he's like, I want to trade. And then he's like, and then like you start hearing all these things. He's like, James Harden is calling the Nets locker room toxic. He's calling Kyrie toxic. Like where's this stuff coming from, man? Like you were just quiet the whole time, and all of a sudden you're just like, I just want out. I think I don't know, maybe there's some leaks in his inner circle or whatever, but he should have just been like, privately said, hey, maybe I want to trade, maybe, and we don't hear about it, and they trade him, right? But the
Yeah.
fact that we hear about it in this era and the way he's like approaching things, the way he already approached the Houston situation, and you're like, is he doing the same thing here in Brooklyn? Seems like it. And he's kind of quitting on the team again. He's like making up injuries. Oh, my hamstring. Like he's like sitting out games now with hamstring injuries again. Maybe they're real, but I don't know. It seems like he was just sitting out way too many games when he wanted to get
Mm-hmm.
traded.
Yeah.
It's just that I don't know. It's a level of competitiveness, like, and we see that a lot in this era, like the KDs and the Kyries and the Hardens. Like, they're just not competitive at some point, right? They're just like, we want that ring, but we want it the easy way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's I think their mindset, and that was definitely Harden's mindset. And he's like, oh shit, this is not going to be the easy way anymore. Let me get out of here.
But the irony is that it could have been the easy way.
It could have been, absolutely, it could have been if he was just patient.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is that he forced his way out of a situation in Brooklyn. I mean, eventually that imploded pretty quickly, but I think it was just COVID. COVID caused all this. It caused Kyrie to push back against these mandates, and the thing never made sense anyway. It's like you can't, if you're an employee in New York City, you have to have a
Yeah, it was
vaccine, but if you're
stupid.
coming
It
from out of
was,
town,
yeah, it never made sense. Yeah,
it never made sense anyway. But eventually they figured it out, and
yeah,
Kyrie was able to play in the playoffs. And I mean, they got swept by Boston, but you know, this is a team where if the three of them were together and maybe they were actually healthy, and they were, all three of them were healthy in those playoffs, maybe they do end up winning the title, or at least making the finals. I know that Boston ended up making the finals and losing to the Warriors, but that it could have very easily been the Warriors Nets instead
yeah.
of Warriors Boston, and he just
No
didn't
man,
have
and
the
that would have
patience.
that
So
would not have ended well for the Warriors. So
I
it
don't
would
know,
have been.
man.
I don't know. It depends, right? It depends on
Yeah,
if they were still beefing with, like, if they were all in, like, they were all synced, and you're getting like a good Harden, you're getting a good Kyrie, and then you got KD, right? That's a lot of firepower for the Warriors to stop at
it
that.
is.
But
It
that's a
is.
that's a different what if for a different day.
Exactly, exactly. So the last team. So actually, I will say that I think he does get a little more criticism than he should because of how crazy things were in Brooklyn, but he should have stuck it out. The last situation, Philadelphia. So supposedly he left some decent amount of money on the table. There was some handshake deals with him and Daryl Morey, who apparently loves James Harden, and he decides, I'm going to burn this place down. I'm going to call Daryl Morey a liar. I'm going to go to China and say I'm never playing for Daryl Morey and do all this and this and that. And this is a team that had a chance to go to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they probably beat that Miami team because they match up pretty well against Miami. Who knows what happens after that? But he basically screws over another contender and says, I need to get out of here. I need to go to the Clippers. And that's where he ends up. So this one, I think I'm 100% blaming James Harden. I understand maybe you left some money on the table, but come on, man. I'm not
Yeah.
feeling bad for you
Yeah,
over
come on,
10,
bro.
15
Like,
million
yeah,
dollars, you
yeah,
know.
exactly. But you beefing about 15 mil when you've made like hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, come on, man. That's like you and me beefing over $5. Like, oh, Khalid, I'm never talking to you again because you owe me $5. Like, come on, Harden.
Well,
Like,
maybe it's a little more than that. Maybe it's like 500,
yeah,
but
okay, whatever, man. You make hundreds of millions of dollars. What's 15 mil, right?
exactly.
But I agree with you. I 100% again blame Harden. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, why are you blasting your like stuff in the public, right? And that's the trend with Harden. He it's maybe a private conversation between GM and Harden and agents, and then all of a sudden Harden's doing some weird stuff in public, right? And that's where he's getting this label as a quitter because he's forcing his way out of these situations that he doesn't like,
Mm-hmm.
and he's in showing no respect to the other side, right? No respect to Daryl Morey, no respect to Daryl Morey, and when he was in Houston, no respect to Daryl Morey again here in Philly, blasting him in Philly. So like when you're that type of player, and look at what he's doing in the Clippers. The Clippers are 0-2 since he's been there, so he's not really helping them either. So I think at some point the NBA is going to be like, damn, we're tired of this dude. Like nobody wants him on a team anymore, and Harden's going to have to just be forced out of the NBA and retire. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what it's come down to. Like, I think he's going to have a horrible season here with the Clippers. He doesn't move the needle for them. Kawhi and PG are already ball dominant guards and slash forwards. What is Harden contributing to that team?
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll get fed up of Harden. Eventually, Harden will get fed up of them. He's like, okay, on to my next destination in the summer.
Yeah, I think at some point during his Houston career, he decided that, I'm an all time great. I don't need to wait around for anybody. I am assist. I mean, he said it himself when he was in his introductory press conference for the Clippers. He said he was on a leash in Philadelphia because they wanted him to play a little more, a little less ball dominant. And now he said,
Yeah.
I'm not part of a system. I am a system. It's like,
Yeah. What
sure,
is he,
you can
Jay Z?
say
He's
that.
a
Yeah, right.
he's
I'm not a business. I'm a businessman or
businessman.
whatever,
Yeah.
right? Like that's fine when you're 28, 29, 30 years
When you're in
old.
your prime. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. When you are averaging 34, 36 points a game, but now you're in your late 30s, you're not the same guy, you've had a bunch of injuries. And I think what with him is just there's this just lack of self-awareness of who you are as a player and what you bring to the table, and you still think that you're the same guy that won MVP and almost averaged a triple double, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think
100%.
like you said, I think his move to the Clippers is not going to pan out. We're about 2 games in. We're recording this on November 9th. So, they, like you said, they only played 2 games. It's not looking good. Maybe they'll figure it out. I think they have enough talent to be at least decent. But we talked about it in the over under pod or the best case, worst case. I said if they get James Harden, I didn't think they were a playoff team anyway. But I think we both said if they add James Harden, they're only going to be worse.
Yeah,
It seems
exactly.
like,
So exactly. Go.
it's that's where we're headed. They're selling jerseys. I'm sure there's a bunch of kids with James Harden jerseys who don't know anything about basketball. They just know the player, but it's just, I think he's going to have like a Carmelo type end to his career where he's not going to be able to recognize his new role. And it's just
Mm-hmm.
going to end kind of
100%.
sad, like,
It's gonna
maybe
be
a little
sad.
premature.
Yeah, for sure.
So ultimately, what is his legacy? Assuming that things go as we think they will go, he doesn't win a ring, he doesn't have any other notable playoff success.